I definitely don't agree with the narrative that a lot of anti-SJWs say, which is that like characters in all works of fiction must always like represent an ideal. If I believed that, then I wouldn't be a fucking Evangelion fan. The reason why it's not bad is because it's like a bear getting sexualized and not a woman. It is an animal getting sexualized not like way worse? I mean, I don't know. Like, do we really sincerely live in a society where people would much rather sexualize like it's less problematic to sexualize animals than 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 human beings? I don't know. Oh man. This kind of hits at another point that I wanted to talk about. I really wish that leftists, when talking about wanting to represent what the average person looks like in media, would stop saying we want people to look realistic. Because the thing is, a lot of people on the internet are autistic. Oh my god, I remember this exact clip. He actually used Forspoken as a good example of what games should strive to be like, which is actually kind of ironic because Forspoken is obviously one of the most shat on games in this regard. And insofar, bro, I don't understand why so many people are like so against sexuality. It's so weird. Like, I expect this from conservatives, but it's so weird that like a bunch of left-leaning people are like this, because lefties are the ones who led the sexual revolution, and now they're like kind of regretting it. Like it's so weird. Let's watch this video from Short Fat Otaku talking about how the male gaze is good. I think male gays are good too, especially ones that are femboy twinks. Oh wait, not that kind of gaze. Oh, never mind. All right, here we go. Oh shit, he has a new intro for his game videos.
This attack is eerily realistic.
My ears. My ears.
And you have to point it all out.
Stellar Blade, guys.
Okay.
Have you heard of it? Surely you must have. It's
Fuck.
currently being talked about all over the internet as a video game in 2024 that is, refreshingly, entirely unafraid of showing off its attractive female main character. Stellar Blade was announced as Project Eve back in 2019, then for the PS4 and Xbox One. By 2021, it was revealed that the development had shifted to the PlayStation 5, and that it would be a timed PS5 exclusive. I remember seeing its previous iterations at old E3s and stuff, and remarking back then that there was no way this was a game being made by Western developers, because the main character was hot. Your average person is getting pretty tired of woke nonsense today in 2024, but back in 2019 and 2021, hyper-progressive influence over video games was at its peak. As an example of what I mean, here's a reaction to some old Project Eve stuff by a podcast on the notable gaming outlet Digital Foundry.
The character designs and the character rendering,
Oh, I remember this
character
shit.
models. So let's say that they're kind of from a bygone era in some ways, in many ways maybe. But what's kind
Arlon's
of
going
interesting
to
to
be
me is
pissed.
that they use what I guess.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by Arlon's good? Listen, Arlon may be a leftist, but he's not like a super SJW most of the time. I mean, I do hate when he gets on my case for saying the word retard. But aside from that, he's not that kind of SJW, okay? At most, he'll be like somewhat judgmental, but Arlon is definitely not the type of person who's like, oh yeah, this kind of sexual media like shouldn't exist. Like, I mean, we were literally talking about this exact same thing on the podcast where he's like, well, Coco, since you like fucking uh what is it? Motto say hey no slave. Uh, I'm glad you enjoy it. The fact that there's an audience for it, there you go. So I will not stand for you shitting on Arlon. In before Arlon comes into this call and is just like, actually, Drax is right. I fucking hate this game, and they should. Yeah, no, I've never really heard Arlon complain about that. I mean, both me and him are like pretty critical of like the sexualization of characters in One Piece, but to be honest, for me, it doesn't really bother me that much. It's only in instances like, say, with Rebecca's design where it just doesn't make any fucking sense at all. So, but
Affectionately is called by people doll-like. If you think of classic, like that are
Yes.
live designs, right? they were kind of action figure-y, kind of dolls basically. So it's kind of interesting to see this mix of, I shouldn't say classic character designs, but character models from a bygone era put into a
It is
modern
weird.
game.
It feels a little out of place, I think.
Well, the game feels a bit out of place in some ways.
I know you were talking about the character from a bygone era. I do think the character model was actually like very distracting in not a good way, because like with the camera angles chosen, it just felt like this game seems like a game that came out in like 002 in terms of its like character design. It's like a bit old and not flattering, I don't think, for a modern audience in comparison to something like Forspoken. Which
Oh
has,
my God, he actually, I remember this exact clip. He actually used Forspoken as a good example of what games should strive to be like, which is actually kind of ironic because Forspoken is obviously one of the most shat on games in this regard, and insofar as like erasing like women being attractive in video games. Like a lot of people were very quick to point out, hey, the model that they used to mocap the character in the game is actually attractive. So there was clearly like a deliberate attempt on the people who modeled the game to make the character look less attractive. In my humble opinion, I just think that these people are shit at modeling. I don't know if there was necessarily a deliberate attempt because in my mind, I'm kind of like, this is the part where I have to play devil's advocate a little bit because I think if you're making a game that's like striving for like a realistic, grounded setting, it is a bit weird. Like movies and games, it doesn't matter what story it is, but if you're going for something grounded and realistic, it is a little bit weird when all the characters in the story are people who are conventionally attractive. It's definitely weird. Like, there's Telltale's The Walking Dead, all the characters just look like normal people there. And if that's what you're striving for with your story, then that's fine. But I would also say that if you're wanting to represent what the average person looks like in your game, then um, if you're wanting to represent the average person in your game, then you should probably use a person who actually looks like the average person for your mocap models instead of like getting really attractive models to reference for your character and then you do like shitty editing jobs that make them look really fucking ugly. So I don't know. Because in a weird way it's almost like implying that like oh God, I didn't even know that. The studio it sold so poorly that the fucking studio that made it shut down. That is pretty fucking bad. That is pretty bad. But like, listen, I definitely understand wanting to represent like what the average person is if your story is meant to be like grounded. Like, I definitely don't agree with the narrative that a lot of anti-SJWs say, which is that like characters in all works of fiction must always like represent an ideal. If I believed that, then I wouldn't be a fucking Evangelion fan. Although most of the characters in Evangelion are in fact conventionally attractive in terms of how they look. Now, how they are mentally, on the other hand, is a different story, but you know, uh like Misato and fucking uh Ritsuko and shit. Um but yeah.
yes, it has much more realistic looking character designs.
Oh yeah,
It's not these
by the way,
hyper
I
proportioned.
also resent the idea that this is like old game design because I mean this person obviously very clearly has like an American centric view of video games because I think didn't Near Automata come out in like 2014? I know that was like 10 years ago, but like I'm just saying modern games still have characters that look like this, you know?
Something or another's, but it also seemed, I don't know, a bit more grounded in a way that I found much more appealing than what we saw here.
From a general standpoint, I do agree with you, but I do think Project Eve, when it comes to facial construction, it does have some merit though.
Oh
'Cause
wait, actually,
the characters
fuck.
look very different.
What I was saying earlier, this kind of hits at another point that I wanted to talk about. I really wish that leftists, when talking about wanting to represent what the average person looks like in media, would stop saying we want people to look realistic. Because the thing is, a lot of people on the internet are autistic. And I mean like actually autistic. Because then you'll have like some like anti-SJWs who will be like, "What do you mean this is not realistic? The character in Stellar Blade is clearly modeled after like an actual person." And then they'll send a picture of like the model that the character is mocapped after. And like it's pretty obvious that like they don't mean realistic as something that is real, but realistic as in something that you're actually likely to go out and see when you go outside. Like you're not it's I don't want to imply that like the average person is like not like super hot, but like yeah, generally speaking the average person is like not like as hot as a supermodel when you go out. Like they just look normal. They just look like normal people. Um I don't know what word to use besides realistic, like believable, average. I don't know, but like clearly some people don't understand when you say we want realistic people, because people think you're saying, oh, the cartoons, the proportions are too cartoony. No one is actually built like this. I mean, there are some people who definitely say no one is actually built like this, and then they get proven wrong. Especially. Coco, the type of people who say this hate Japanese games, or at least they say things that make you think they do. I mean, we've been known that for a long time. There are a lot of people in American games journalism that hate Japanese games. I mean, this has been the case even since the early 2000s before like, you know, this whole thing like really came into full effect. But right.
It's just that once you go, neck down, there's a lot of issues on display.
Yes, that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, you heard that right. These reanimated soy golems, more commonly known as professional games journalists, chided Stellar Blade for featuring an unrealistically attractive female lead and compared it to fucking Forspoken, which, if you watched my video on that nightmare, you already know how bad it was. The claim that the game belongs in the 2000s, yeah, dude, that's why it's so refreshing. I remember back in the day making fun of games that were, quite frankly, kind of mediocre, that also used a sexy girl on the front cover in order to make sales. But a mediocre sex-stuffed game is actually a breath of fresh air in today's climate, where most new games have characters that aren't sexy at all, while the actual quality of the game is even worse. It's not just Forspoken, though that's the
Anyone remember fucking Sin Episodes Emergence? The game that sold so poorly that the company fucking got bought out by another company and it became like a mobile phone game making company. They relied so heavily on sexual marketing for that too, because they had like models dressed up as like the actual characters at E3 to promote the game. They tried so fucking hard. It just goes to show that sex doesn't always sell. But
obvious go-to. EA's recent AAA release, Immortals of Avum, is shaping up to be a massive failure. Mary Jane looking like Spider-Man's mom was probably one of the most prolific memes of 2023. And Suicide Squad. How do you have a full 10 years of new technology between Harley Quinn's last appearance and now, and still make a strictly uglier version of the character? I don't even mean in terms of like, she's not as hot as she was in the old game. That's obviously true. But even like the quality of the animation, the clothing, the lighting, it's all significantly worse. Now this is what looks like it comes from the 2000s, specifically from a bad FMV in the GameCube era or something. Some retard took Stellar Blade's main character out into New York and got some on-the-ground reactions, and these actually blew my fucking mind. Check this nonsense out.
Stellar Blade! She looks 14. And with the side ponytail too, girl. She needs a bow.
Hey,
She looks like she's 16.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm just gonna say, I know I always make this joke about Asian women, so this is me being a little bit hypocritical here. But seeing an Asian woman and being like, she looks like she's 14 is kind of racist, okay? And I'll own the fact that me making those jokes is kind of racist as well. But when I say it, it's a joke. She's like big straight. Like, she's modeled after a real person. Like, fucking hell. Listen, man. I mean, there's a reason why
Yeah, I
a
think I
particular art, there's a reason why a particular type of art in Japan is as popular as it is. It's because that's actually what Japanese women. Well, okay, all right. That was a terrible joke. I shouldn't have said that. Please forgive me. Don't cancel me. All right. Okay, moving on.
actually spoke about this take in the Fat Activist video recently. The main reason these people think an attractive woman is underage is because the last time they were thin is when they were a kid.
It's perfectly fine to have an animation style, especially in a game, but
the
when you're
fuck?
appropriating someone else's image and then changing it, it
What
becomes
the fuck is that? Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that statement from Dev is a little bit outrageous, but okay. Jesus Christ.
Oh, it's now an issue when you appropriate somebody else's image? How about every single race-swapped character in the past decade?
We're working on the physics of the way her body moves rather than the physics of the actual game, which you can see in there does not look great. That's how you know that you've messed up.
Jesus. Seems like they're over-sexualizing her.
Yeah, definitely over-sexualizing her.
Stellar Blade.
That's the title of a game that would do this. That's the title of a game that would do this. I think it's just men that's never touched a woman in their life not knowing what the fuck they look like. And so they're like, this is what women in my video games always looked like. So why are we changing it? It's like, because it's not real, bro.
She's modeled after a real person. They like scanned her body and everything. Bro, I don't understand why so many people are like so against sexuality. It's so weird. Like, I expect this from conservatives, but it's so weird that like a bunch of left-leaning people are like this, because lefties are the ones who led the sexual revolution, and now they're like kind of regretting it. Like, it's so weird, and it's so weird because like I know earlier in the stream I was saying that like obviously conservatives would probably agree with them on this to some extent, but like it's so weird seeing people that like they mainly aim their content towards a right-wing market being the ones defending this shit. Like it's like the inverse of what's supposed to be happening. It's not supposed to be like this. Like what the hell?
Every one of these
I mean, okay, I'm making assumptions about the fact that these people are left-leaning, but let's be real, they're left-leaning. Anyway, moving on.
pretty much said the same thing, that the main character is unrealistic. The thing is, she's not. Korean model Shin Jae-eun was the body scan for the character. This is a person.
Oh my god. Dev is doing the thing that I literally just said so many people keep on doing, which is that people are like misunderstanding what they mean when they okay, well that girl was like saying this character was designed by people who don't know what real women actually look like. So she obviously is saying it in the sense that like the proportions, like no woman actually looks like that. But like generally speaking, I'm almost certain that when people say it's not realistic, what they mean is that most women don't look like that. But I don't know. It's
person who exists in reality. She is definitionally not unrealistic. And they didn't really change her that much or anything. When you overlay the character onto the actress's modeling pics, you can tell it's pretty accurate. She is a lot closer to the ideal than your average woman, sure, but that's a good thing. We do want attractive people in our games, don't we? Well,
I mean, you say that, Drax, that these types of people don't buy video games, but remember that one time when is it Zoe Quinn? I think it was her. Remember that time when she like flexed her massive ass video game collection? I just feel sorry for someone like Zoe Quinn though, because like imagine buying all of those games and presumably actually playing them, but apparently you probably hated every minute of it because the game doesn't meet like your progressive standard. It's very funny when you think about it, but
let's think about that question for a minute. The soy boys on that Digital Foundry panel all gave the same basic take, that in the modern progressive era, sex no longer sells the way it did back in the 2000s. Gaming has grown up, moved beyond that gaudy, trashy, misogynistic nonsense. But that just doesn't seem to be the case in reality. The overwhelming amount of support that Stellar Blades received, specifically because of its sex appeal, goes against the progressive claim, and the progs are not happy that the gamers have rejected their narrative. For example, this guy says, the thirst trap Stellar Blade looks awful with very outdated graphics, and it obviously uses sex to sell because they lack real talent.
oh my
Hold
god.
on, lacking real talent? Have you seen all of these shitty games? But more importantly, I thought sex didn't sell anymore. When developers resort to sex to sell their game, it usually means the game is lacking. Yeah, this was pretty good logic back in the day, but why is it that games nowadays have such butt-ugly fucking people in them and they still suck? I pointed this out on Twitter in a tweet that got a little bit of traction. How are all the wokoids going to complain about a hot girl in a video game when they're all over Baldur's Gate 3's nudity? Most people agreed with me, but I received this reply from a brain-dead trans activist. I don't get it. I whip my dick out
This reminds
at a
me
urinal and everyone's...
This reminds me of like the same like argument that a lot of people made that it's like weirdly hypocritical that a lot of people will like say it's bad that Japanese games like have sexualized characters, but no one really bats an eye at the fact that like Last of Us 2 has like a blatant like sex scene with Abby and that guy. And like that game was praised by the exact same kind of crowd that would normally like shit on Japanese games. And also, once again, like I said this earlier in the stream, Baldur's Gate is a game that features a person like turning themselves into a bear and then the person fucking the bear. Like, if that's not like sexual degeneracy, I don't know what is, okay? Like, fuck me. Oh, Anita Sarkeesian? Oh, right. I'm sorry, these people are like all the same to me. I can't even lie. But like, I don't know, man. Is the reason why it's not bad is because it's like a bear getting sexualized and not a woman? It is an animal getting sexualized not like way worse? I mean, I don't know. Like, do we really sincerely live in a society where people would much rather sexualize like it's less problematic to sexualize animals than 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 human beings? I don't know. Oh man, what the hell? DM'd me. Oh, Ben is free and currently in a call with Lav. That's wild. I don't really feel like covering that right now. Maybe we'll cover that tomorrow. Uh, Alright, wait, how long have I been going? I feel like this is the longest I've gone in a while. Hold on. Check my dashboard. Okay, apparently I've been going for 4 hours and 32 minutes. Right, maybe we'll go for like another hour or two maximum. I mean, there's not that many people watching right now, but I feel like at the very least we managed to get some clippable moments out of this for my YouTube channel. So that's something.
Was cool with it, but then I do it at Red Lobster and get kicked out. No one has any consistency. Like, for those that don't get it, it's the comparison. I don't care about people playing the games, but just going, but Baldur's Gate 3 has sex scenes and nudity misses the fucking point completely. He's complaining that people will take issue with a game that pushes the sex sells gimmick of thongs and tits out at all times, but are okay with Baldur's Gate 3 having just any nudity. The comparison is ridiculous. Now, I want to examine this comparison in detail. This person is saying that sexuality in Baldur's Gate 3 is akin to whipping your dick out at a urinal, while sexuality in Stellar Blade is akin to whipping your dick out in a Red Lobster. The comparison serves to highlight that sexuality is appropriate in one instance and not in another. The complaint is that the sexuality of the character in Stellar Blade is always on display during both.
Did anyone point out to the guy that Dev to the there you go. Fuck's sake. I really did anyone point out to the person that Dev is talking about that that game features bear sex? Listen, I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm like team fiction is fiction, right? So I'm just clarifying by saying that. But I'm just saying that if you're someone who's a ride or die in terms of, oh, sexual content in media is like degenerate and like it should be like less of a thing, I definitely think you should be calling out a game for featuring bestiality. You know, if you want to be consistent. But then again, it's not necessarily the fact that the game is promoting sexual deviancy. It's the fact that these people don't like when games sexualize women specifically. That's that's like the reality of the situation, okay? So that's why they're totally willing to overlook when like a game but then again, the person that's fucking the bear is your character, right? So I mean that's kind of true. The person did turn themselves into a bear, but like it's I don't know, it's just it's like not even stylized at all. Like if you're someone that like I don't want to make this take because I know that if I make this take, a lot of people are going to call me hypocritical. But it's not stylized at all. It's a hyper realistic looking bear. Like like I'll freely admit right now that I've looked at like low punny, I've looked at like fucking, so it's not necessarily the fact that it's not human, okay? But it's a hyper realistic bear. Like it's one thing to look at like fucking Sonic the Hedgehog or Bark the polar bear, but it's look, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But look, all I'm saying is that if you want to be consistent, well, okay, I guess I just countered myself by saying it's not actually inconsistent because their main issue doesn't, it's not, sex in of itself is not the problem. It's sexualizing women that's the problem. It's having female characters that are sexy. Because the only time, from what I've observed, the only time, like, it's okay for women to be sexual in a work of fiction is if it's women doing it themselves. So like OnlyFans, self-made porn. But if it's like a video game made by like a bunch of dudes and they have like a sexy female protagonist, that's when it becomes a problem. But I don't know. I say that, but I feel like it's weird because I feel like even if you did have like a video game that was made by an entirely female staff and it had a sexy female character, like a lot of people would still have a problem with that. Like it's weird. Like there's just something like with having sexuality in media that a lot of these types of people don't like, but don't seem to hold the same standard for like OnlyFans. I mean, there are some people who do say that like people who own like Lav Loon, for example. I know that Lav Loon used to argue that like if you're a woman that has an OnlyFans, you are contributing harm to the overall like perception of women and stuff like that because like especially if you're in porn, you're creating unrealistic standards for what sex is actually like and all these other things. So there are some people who are consistent in that regard where it's like sexualization of women is bad across the board, whether it's like in entertainment media or well, porn is a form of entertainment media in of itself too, but and I'm assuming you guys know what I mean when I say all this, right? So, uh,
Sexual and non sexual scenes, while Baldur's Gate 3 simply has sex scenes. What this person fails to realize is that in Baldur's Gate 3, you can strip down naked and run through the game in the nude anytime you
all
like.
just LARPing, both sides do it, which is why there's a lot of gay conservatives. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think there's anything necessarily paradoxical or contradictory about being a gay person that is a conservative. Because you can align with a certain side of a political spectrum while still disagreeing with elements of that side of the political aisle. So like you might be a gay person that's like, yeah, I want that wall to be fucking built. I am pro-life. I am etc. Like you might have all these conservative beliefs. I know that there's a lot of gay people that are like anti-trans, for example. And if that's the case, then you're gonna vote Republican. Now, it is somewhat contradictory in the sense that like, yeah, these people represent beliefs that you actually have, but they do still push for things that are ultimately harmful to you in other aspects. Like we know for a fact that if given the chance, Republicans would absolutely make like, that kind of marriage like illegal almost immediately. But that's part of the reason why like being being a minority, for example, is a very weird position to be in. Because like for example, like if you're black in the United States, um, the Republican Party is often seen as like the racist party, so you're oftentimes going to vote Democrat. But the thing is, we know for a fact that socially, African Americans generally tend to be conservative. So when they vote Democrat, they're not really voting for a party that actually represents their beliefs. They're voting out of fear for the fact that if Republicans get power in the country, all of a sudden the country is going to go back to being Jim Crow. So it's like this one major issue that concerns their actual identity. But then you have obviously there are black people who vote Republican who are like, actually, you know what? The world will never go back to being that bad. Racism is an issue that's been completely dealt with, and so they will start voting Republican. And those people often get called coons and Uncle Toms because like I said, the Republican Party is often viewed as the racist party. So if you're a black person who's voting Republican, then you're voting against your own self-interest as a black person. But the thing is, they're not voting against their own self-interest insofar as their other beliefs are concerned. It's a concept that a lot of people on the left have a very difficult time grasping, which is the fact that people don't just vote based on their ethnic or sexual or gender identity. People vote on things that they actually believe in, you know? Like, I know that there are some people who do vote based on, like, those things, like their identity, but there are many people who are willing to look past that and will be like, or at the very least have convinced themselves that those things aren't as big of an issue as they are, and so they will vote in accordance with their beliefs, right? So that's one thing that is important to keep in mind, and this is why a lot of leftists are terrible at debating black conservatives because they try to appeal to their race, and and it especially looks bad when it's a white person doing it. Like that one person who said to Ben Carson, do you identify as black? Because Carson is like an unashamed conservative who like pushes for people to vote Republican. And it's just like, you have no idea how cringe that looks, especially to other black people. It looks terrible, okay? That's the type of thing that convinces more black people to vote Republican, by the way. Those are the kinds of clips that Candace Owens will take and use as proof of the fact that like a lot of liberals, especially white liberals, very clearly think that black people are like retarded. So, I'm just saying, like, yeah. Anyway, all this to say, I don't think it's necessarily contradictory for a person to be conservative and gay, but it kind of is in a similar fashion to being like, you know, black and voting Republican. But whatever. See, like it's kind of like how I find myself in a similar position. I mean, I don't know if I want to admit that I have this take, but let's just say that there is a take that I have that would technically be considered a right-wing take, and I don't know if I would be willing to. I mean, this I feel like this issue has already been solved in the sense that like it's never gonna go the way that I want it to ever, um, because it would be considered a violation of human rights or whatever. But let's just say that like sometimes I do wonder, would I really be willing to vote for the people who generally operate in a way that's against my own self-interest just so I can have this one thing removed from society? It's very interesting to think about. I mean, obviously, like if I lived in America, I think I would probably tell someone that you'd have to be borderline delusional to think that the country will ever head back to like Jim Crow. I think that's like literally impossible. I feel like if a president tried to pass that kind of policy, it would ultimately result in like a revolution because most people wouldn't stand for that. So, yeah. And
Like,
that's part of the reason why most people, even the most racist people in the government, would never try to push that kind of legislation. So, because it's a major optics L, okay? So to some extent, you actually don't have to worry about it ever becoming as bad as it once was. But that doesn't mean it can't be worse than it is right now. So that is something to always consider when voting. Anyway, back to the video. uh,
and also that a lot of the armor you get certainly serves to show off the assets of the various characters. So this complaint is retarded. The immediate explanation I came to was, of course, safe horny, a topic I've already covered pretty extensively online. Every time one of these people made a complaint about unrealistic bodies in gaming or whatever the fuck, their bio or their likes or whatever else would be filled with the most degenerate shit imaginable. And safe horny is basically just a political justification for their hypocrisy. My politics are good, therefore I can indulge in problematic content, and be protected from influence with the proper thinking. Your politics are bad, therefore your sexuality is oppressive and must be restricted. But I can hear my friend V screaming off in the distance, don't you dare bring up that lefty bullshit, Dev. So let's go down a slightly different route this time. My other friend, Taftach, replied to my tweet with the key that unlocks the whole thing. The answer is obvious. Pathological fear of straight male sexuality. Baldur's Gate 3 sex is gay as fuck. Think back to my recent video, The Queer Problem, where I talk about people appropriating the queer aesthetic, despite not actually being gay or trans, in order to make political statements and be a part of the in-group. When Taftaj says Baldur's Gate 3 sex is gay as fuck, that is what she means. Even straight sex in Baldur's Gate 3 is gay in that it adopts a queer aesthetic. The sex is either shallow and lustful, or goofy and ridiculous. Contrast that with Mass Effect's famous sex scenes. They're kinda janky now, yeah, but they're the culmination of a growing relationship over the course of the entire game, on the eve of the final battle. There's an emotional arc present. But that's straight sex, not gay sex, even if the sex you're having is gay. Because in the context of what Taftaj is saying, straight sex is serious, straightforward, titillating, and fundamentally male, while gay sex is comedic, degenerate, empty, and fundamentally queer. This lens creates problems for the progressives
Yeah,
that they have yet
I'm
to come
just
to grips
saying,
with.
speaking as someone
This
who's
next
looked
bit
at their
isn't about
fair
video
share
games or
of
silly.
femboy on femboy furry art, that's definitely not true, okay? That shit can be titillating and hot as fuck, okay? That's definitely an L dev moment. Drax, I know you agree. I know you agree.
Blade, but it's the best example I've got to illustrate this. Joe Cat is an animator on YouTube with over 1 million subscribers. His art style is that simplistic, pastel colors, thick lines kind of stuff that young progs love. He's quite progressive in his politics himself, and although he's entirely straight, he is queer-coded. He's doing the queer aesthetic thing. Joe Cat went viral for this animation, the audio originally being cut from one of his streams, and he animated it because he thought it was funny. It's only 30 seconds long, so I'll just play the whole thing.
Sad that there's no muscly girls in here. Well,
What?
I mean, yeah, but, you know, sure, I like to joke around and talk about how, oh, I'm strong women all the time, but that's not the only girls I like. I like big girls, pretty kitty girls, really witty girls, singing ditty girls. I like the licky girls with the nice thighs. I like a good chest, no matter what size. I like the belly folds, I like the six-packs, really tall queens, and the short stacks. From the mild girls to the wild girls. You got style girls, make them round girls. Yeah, I just really like girls.
Yeah, he got cancelled for this, by online progressives specifically. It wasn't waves upon waves of rightoids that were coming after him for supporting trans rights or something, though there were a couple of those. No, the bulk of the harassment was overwhelmingly from his own political camp, because he was cringe and sexually objectifying women. And he was a sexual harasser, apparently, and a bunch of other shit that no one had any proof of. He was doxxed, he was sent death threats, he was sent threatening packages in the mail, his parents were targeted, his girlfriend was targeted, and it got to the point that he simply decided to leave the internet. I want to make this absolutely clear, guys. A man was bullied off the internet for being straight. I'm not going to go too deep into this story. All the harassment he received is cataloged and out there if you care to dig it up yourself. But
I remember
basically,
that whole
Joe
thing.
Cat cultivated an audience of uwu heckin' valid zoomer progs who turned on him basically over vibes. And then I saw Vosh's take. Yes, the video's still coming. Where he says, normalize straight dudes being gay for women. This is what Taftaj was getting at when she said that Baldur's Gate 3's sex was gay, even when it was straight. Straight dudes can't be gay for women unless being gay refers to a specific aesthetic. And we can use Joe Cat's video to discover exactly what that aesthetic is. Let me go on one quick side tangent first, though. There is actually an inverse of this tendency on the right wing, too, where stuff that is straight is recontextualized as gay. Remember the whole tomboy abs thing with Sargon and Academic Agent?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure those guys didn't call it gay specifically, but I'm not too sure that they would object to that framing. And you can absolutely find people online making that point more explicitly. I feel like if you find a girl with abs attractive, you're gay. If you eat your girl out, you're gay. Like, what the fuck, dude? Thankfully, this stuff on the right isn't nearly as common as its equivalent on the left. With Joe Cat, we've now got the cipher. We have a lens through which we can view a lot of these other interactions. When the progs complain about big boobs in anime, or cute female characters in video games, or petite women who do cosplay, they always kick up a big stink about it. They'll call you an alt-right, gamergate, man-baby, chud porn addict for consuming whatever it is that you happen to like. In fact, porn addict used to refer to people who watch too much porn and had a real problem. But retards on Twitter are now using it to refer to any male who watches anything heteronormative. And that is the problem. Big boobs in anime and cute females in video games.
By
and
the
petite
by the
women
way,
doing cosplay.
I'm gonna be honest. This is another thing that I want to talk about. I think it's really cringe that a lot of like lefty people on the internet use porn addict as an insult, because whenever No Nut November comes, which is like a month where people try to challenge themselves to like not watch porn as much as they normally do, and perhaps even use that specific month as a month to maybe even quit porn entirely. I mean, I don't know why you would wait until November, but guess who starts making fun of people for caring about wanting to cut down on how much porn they watch? Guess who starts being like, watch as much porn as you want? It's cringe that you would even care about how much porn you watch. It's definitely not right wingers. It's the exact same leftists that will use porn addict as an insult against you when they see you liking sexual content on the internet. It's so weird. It's so dumb. It's so stupid. It makes no fucking sense. On the one hand, they're encouraging people watching porn. On the other hand, they're shitting on them for watching porn. They even encourage the creation of porn because they're the ones who encourage like people to like make OnlyFans and shit like that. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's weird. It's paradoxical. Just whatever it takes to insult the other side. That's pretty much all it is. Whatever it takes, whether or not it actually lines up with the things you believe in or not. I don't know. It's weird.
They all cater to the male gaze. They're not safe horny, they're problematic horny. They're heteronormative. The sexual content of
I'm just,
these things
bro,
does not serve the
because a lot of
deconstruct-
people are gonna say that I sound stupid saying this. I'm telling you, bro, when November this year, go on the internet and go and find some random person who's using porn addict as an insult. Screenshot it, and then when November comes around and people are talking about NoFap this November, go on that same person's profile. You will find them saying, it's so cringe that people. I'm telling you, okay? They make no fucking sense. People are gonna think I'm being crazy. I'm not crazy. Go on that like I know I'm basically encouraging being like an e-stalker right now just to prove a point, but I fucking guarantee you that will happen, okay? Do it. Obviously don't harass whoever you decide to make your mark in like their comments or whatever. Don't do that, but I'm just saying. All right.
Like the patriarchy. So to the progressive, they're problematic. They're exploitative. But watching Joel in One Golf take it in the ass and Last of Us 2,
And here's the
having sex with a
example we were
bear
talking
in
about
Baldur's Gate
earlier.
3, this is queer coded. It doesn't cater to the male gaze. It's deconstructing our patriarchal understanding of sexuality.
I don't really.
It's centering
I'm
experiences.
gonna be honest. I don't really get making that argument for the scene with Abby because it's a straight couple having normal sex. I mean, it's not like hypersexualized in a pornographic way. It's just like two characters having sex, and it's a straight couple. Unless one would make the argument that it's queer coded because Abby is like a very masculine, like she's a very built, muscular woman, but I mean, she still has a distinctly noticeably feminine face. Like she's very clearly a woman. So wait, oh man, someone is gonna get me for that and say you think that only people who have feminine faces are women. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, leave me the fuck alone. Seriously. Anyway.
Other than the straight cis male. And so it's empowering, it's liberating. I think that this is a better explanation of safe horny than what was in my previous videos. Even going all the way back to Link in Tears of the Kingdom. Their complaint
Again, it's LARPing. Most of the people who cry about porn have the most degenerate kinks. I mean, to some extent, that's actually kind of true. You're not entirely wrong there. Are not entirely wrong.
during that game's peak was that despite what they view as Link's queer coding, he was still ultimately straight and cis and in a relationship with Princess Zelda. For the Progs, this was betrayal. Link's queer coding was a promise to them, and Nintendo failed to fulfill it. I personally believe that Stellar Blade will be the tipping point in all this nonsense.
So this is the part where I kind of have to throw a certain friend of mine under the bus, because there actually is someone that I do know who kind of had a similar take for that exact same reason. So I'm not naming names, okay, but
financial success, as well as the
okay, you know
success
what?
of other smaller titles.
I'm going to be generous to that person and assume that maybe it wasn't for that reason. But they definitely didn't like the fact that it was confirmed that Link and Zelda are in a relationship. Whether or not it was actually for that reason, I might have to double check with them on that. All right.
To have traditionally attractive people in them again, like Lies of P, for example, which is the game you've been watching this whole time, will show the developers that no matter how woke your game is, no matter how much you talk down to gamers, or shame them, or browbeat them, or whatever else, we're still the ones with the money. Okay, you can call us bigots for not buying the slop, but I'm still not giving you my money. And before you ask, yes, This is happening. Take the white pill, the tides are turning. For example, the next part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming out soon, and Tifa and Aeris are yet again attractive women. Yeah, the progs are still whining with the male gaze and whatever the fuck else, but the gamers will vote with their wallets, and there's nothing progressives can do about it. The only thing left to do at this point is hope that the Italian Senate doesn't get wind of this again. Anyway, Stellar Blade's coming out in a few months. If you support this sort of thing, make sure you buy it. We've got to show the developers that these are the kind of games that we want. The video game industry is already going through a massive crisis because nobody's buying the AAA slop anymore. Now is the time for us to lead them back into the fold. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you're seeing this video...
Alright, next